I find it interesting how you can track the quality and features found in every new Mario platformer against the console they're released for. It's to be expected since none of Nintendo's franchises quite have the same appeal and marketability as Mario, so if you're gonna focus on one game to show what a console can do, it's probably gonna involve Mario. But it's the relations between Mario games and the console that I find particularly intriguing, to the point where they almost represent each other. Super Mario World was a great showcase of the SNES's advanced tech and just how many colours you could have on screen at one time. Super Mario 64 set the benchmark for 3D platformers for many years after and gave a glimpse at what a three-dimensional Mario game could be like. Super Mario Sunshine is kinda weird but endlessly entertaining, not unlike the GameCube. Super Mario Galaxy was one of the most impressive and polished games that Nintendo ever made, a fitting accompaniment to a console that shipped over 100 million units. So you can see some kind of follow through with a Mario game in its console. When Nintendo are doing well, the Mario games are pretty special. When Nintendo have a few problems, the Mario games aren't quite as wonderful. Luckily the Switch has had an outstanding start to its life, so Super Mario Odyssey was never in any danger. On the contrary, with how Nintendo handled the expectation behind Breath of the Wild, there was every chance that Super Mario Odyssey was going to be the game we all hoped it could be, especially because of how Zelda went about its business. Over there you can find a game with a genuine respect for previous games in its franchise, as Breath of the Wild uproots typical Zelda conventions while still keeping things relatively familiar. The smart money would be for Super Mario Odyssey to do the same for Mario games, and yet you're still jumping around levels, picking up a load of funky collectibles in order to go to new areas and eventually save Peach from Bowser. It's the same basic formula that Nintendo have been using for years, only this time everything looks and sounds and plays just a little bit better than ever before. With Super Mario Odyssey trying to approach traditional Mario gameplay with more of an open, adventurous style, you naturally end up visiting a lot of large areas where you can really take in the vibrant visuals and the atmospheric music and this fucking avalanche of charm. It's not something that previous Mario games have necessarily struggled with, but you can tell that Nintendo have upped their game here. Even with something as simple as the story. Bowser kidnaps Peach again, but hold on a second, he's actually doing something with that. The man has a plan this time, and it's to forcibly make Peach his wife, enlisting the help of the Broodals, this group of rabbits, as wedding planners. I mean, it's not Shakespeare, but it does provide a base for the adventure to play off of, and everything you do in every kingdom you visit is in pursuit of Bowser and the Broodals. Super Mario Odyssey is a very open video game, but you're still given objectives to help point you in the direction of whatever conflict has engulfed the kingdom. It does mean that despite all of this freedom, you need to beat up a Broodal in order to go somewhere else, but this is virtually the only restriction placed on the player. I reckon it's just there to give speedrunners something to worry about, because they're having a pretty good time here. Super Mario Odyssey's main selling point is these huge open worlds that Mario can run and jump around to his heart's content as he tries to find power moons to power up his hat-shaped airship. There's a few complications on the way and plenty of variance in how these moons are hidden in these worlds, with multi-moons given out when you beat a significant boss, but it's generally not too far removed from what you'd expect. The return to Sandbox-like levels is an interesting idea though, because the previous times where Mario has done this in Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine were because of technical limitations. Rather than make hundreds of separate 3D levels, you make a dozen large ones to house the 8 or so stars that you can find here by exploring every corner of the stage. The move to more linear levels in Super Mario Galaxy came about because of better tech, and also I imagine because Nintendo had so many ideas for that game that they needed a sequel to house them all. They kind of had to be linear. I personally found more enjoyment from the non-linearity of 64 and Sunshine, so what Odyssey's doing here is pretty spectacular for me. Though it wouldn't have been a good idea to add more space and leave Mario with his standard skill set. Which is why I'm very glad to see that Mario has been given a bunch of special techniques to increase his scope of movement to something ridiculous, really. Most of them are down to Cappy, who I'll get to in a bit, but you really feel like you've got the right tools to be able to traverse these large worlds as efficiently as possible. This is where Super Mario Odyssey comes alive as a game for speedrunning. While I can jump all over the place and throw my cap at the right time so I can jump off of it and whatever, the kind of stuff that people can do when they know what they're doing is terrifying, really. The ways you can use Cappy to scale walls is something we've never really seen in a Mario game before, and it makes a big difference if you're able to master it. Cappy, of course, has another more important use, which is possessing inanimate objects and living creatures to put them under Mario's power. It's hard not to see it as some kind of horrible exercise in mind control, which the game casually glosses over as Mario forces himself inside the mind of a frog, and, like, what happens to the frog at this point? It seems like a nightmarish existence, but fortunately, this mechanic is so enjoyable that you soon stop thinking about the specifics. You can generally tell from a distance what objects you can capture with your magic hat, and what kind of properties you inherit while in this form. I don't think there was a moment in the game where I didn't have a smile on my face while plodding around as a Goomba or slamming this guy's fist into his own face. It's basically a clean slate for creativity in this game, so you can have a starring role in whatever weird thing Super Mario Odyssey comes up with next, and not have it feel tacked on. While also encouraging the adventurer in you to throw your hat at anything that moves, or just doesn't move. You can't possess sheep though, so, you know, I mean, it was nearly perfect. The one thing that Super Mario Odyssey isn't is hard, but very specifically in the long term only. There aren't any one-ups in this game, which means that you haven't got any lives to worry about. Instead, running out of health takes away 10 coins from your very large total, which can become a problem if you're struggling with a particularly punishing part of the game, but coins are everywhere. It's not much of a punishment. But there are moments in the game where there's a lot of insta-kill traps, or you've had your hat taken away from you, where you might be dying a bit more often than normal. All that means is that you haven't got the prospect of a game looming over you as you do all of this dying. I noticed this most of all in the post-game, which is fucking massive by the way, where certain challenges spike the difficulty to a huge degree and really make you work for those moons. Suddenly keeping a hold of all those coins isn't so easy. The coins themselves are used to buy all sorts of groovy things, but mostly other costumes to wear. Yellow coins can be used at any shop in the game, but purple coins are kingdom specific and act as another thing you can collect as you run around. The costumes themselves can be used to access a special area in every kingdom, but mostly, I just want Mario to wear a sombrero and a poncho. Is that so weird? I don't think it's weird. All I know is that the crazy cap vendor in New Donk City says, "I just want to die." He doesn't get it at all.
I just want to die.
Super Mario Odyssey did see the release of 3 new Amiibo of Mario, Peach and Bowser decked out in wedding gear, which led some people to think that they would unlock exclusive costumes much like other Switch games, but it simply unlocks them earlier than usual. It's not really something to get too worked up about. While I'm here, I'm aware that there's one of the best games of all time hidden on the Switch cartridge, but I think I'm way more interested in the capture mode. I didn't realize how much I wanted to pause the on-screen action so I could change the camera angle and add filters until I filled my Switch with all of the pictures. It is significantly more fun than I would have ever thought, and once you know that Mario reacts to certain things in certain ways, it's all you'll be doing. I have no idea how I got anything done. I wouldn't say I came into this game with too many expectations, but given the high standard of quality of both Mario games in the past and Nintendo games in the present, Super Mario Odyssey was always likely to be a pretty special video game. It takes ideas from the non-linear Mario games and the slightly more railroaded ones, and mashes them together to create something which is vast enough to provide hours upon hours of content. I think there's over 600 power moons in this game. I'm still not sure on that one. But while still maintaining an unreal level of polish at all times. The capture mechanic is so much fun to use, but it also encourages the kind of experimentation and exploration from the player that ties in so well with the overall theme of adventure in Super Mario Odyssey. Very occasionally it can feel like the game lacks a clear direction, like finding 70 stars so you can fight Bowser, but I think that's just down to previous experiences of Mario games. By comparison, Super Mario Odyssey is a whole new ball game that changes everything that you might have known about Mario games, and I genuinely couldn't be happier. Thank you for watching, and thanks to Nintendo for sending me the review copy. Take care, guys.